Chapter 42. How Don Gaylor went with the damsel in quest of the knight who had overthrown them, till he did battle with him. 4 days Gaylor rode with the damsel, and so wrathful was he for this fall, that whatever knight encountered him in that time felt the effects, and many were slain for the act of another. At length they saw a fair fortress built above a vale. The damsel told him that there was no other place near where he could lodge that night, and they made up to it. At the gate they found many men and dames and damsels, so that it seemed to be the house of a good man, and among them was a knight of 70 years with a cloak of scarlet skin, who courteously bade him welcome. "Sir," quoth Gaylor, "you welcome us so well that though we found another host, we would not leave your hospitality." Then they were led into a hall, and supper was given them right honourably. And when the cloths were removed, the old knight went to Gaylor and asked him if the damsel was to be his bedfellow. He replied, "No," and 2 damsels then conducted her to her chamber, while he was shown a rich bed for himself. "Here rest yourself," said his host. "God knows the pleasure I have in entertaining you and all errant knights, for I myself have been one, and have 2 sons who are like, but both now are badly wounded. For they came by a knight who dismounted them both, and they are greatly ashamed of their foil rode after him, and came up to him by a river as he was about to cross it in a boat, and they would have made him do battle with sword, since they knew how he could joust. The knight, who was in haste, would have declined the battle, but my sons prevented him from entering the boat. A lady who was in the boat then said to them that they were discourteous in detaining her knight against her will, but they said he must needs do battle. "Let it be, then," said the lady, "that he shall fight with the better of you twain, and if you shall conquer him, that shall suffice." "Not so," they answered. "If one failed, the other should prove his fortune." The knight then grew angry and cried, "Come both, since you will not let me proceed." And one after the other they sent him from their horses, utterly confounded, then crossed the river and went his way. I went afterwards to bring home my sons, for they were sorely wounded. You shall see with what wounds, such as never before given by any knight. He then sent for the armor which they had worn, and it was so cut through with the sword that Gaylor greatly marvelled, and asked what arms the knight bore. A vermilion shield with 2 grey lions, and another on his helmet, and he rides a roan horse. "Know you who he is?" cried Gaylor. "No," said the old knight. "It is the same knight whom I am seeking," quoth Gaylor, "and if I find him, I will revenge your 2 sons and myself, or die." We'll let that keep. "Sir," quoth his host, "I would counsel you to forbear the attempt, for as what my sons have suffered, they brought it on themselves." And then he bade him good night. The next morning Gaylor and his guide departed. They crossed the river in the boat, and proceeding about 5 leagues came to a fortress. "Wait for me a little," said the damsel. "I will be here presently." And she entered the castle. Presently she returned, and bringing with her another damsel and 10 knights on horseback, and another damsel who was passing fair, said to Gaylor, "Sir, my cousin tells me that you are in quest of the knight who bears 2 grey lions and a vermilion shield, that you may know who he is. But I tell you that you cannot learn by force, for there is no knight like him in all the islands, and he will neither tell you nor any other for 3 years, unless it be forced from him." "Damsel," said Gaylor, "I shall not cease my inquiry, and would rather learn his name by force than by other means." "Since that be so," said she, "within 3 days I will bring you to him, at my cousin's request." They set forth, and by vespers time came to an arm of the sea that clipped round an island, so that there was full 3 leagues water to cross. A bark was ready at the harbour, but before they entered it an oath was demanded, that there was only 1 knight in the company. "Why this oath required?" said Gaylor. The damsel replied, "The lady of the island will have it so. When 1 knight has crossed over, no other is suffered to come till the first return, or is slain. Who is it that kills or conquers them? The knight whom you are seeking. He has been here half a year, and by this occasion a turnkey was held here by the lady of the island, and another dame of great beauty. This knight came hither from a foreign land, and being on her side won the victory, whereat she was so pleased that she never rested till she had won him for a paramour, because he is desirous of seeking adventures. The lady, to detain him with her, invites knights to joust against him. If by chance they are slain, they are there interred, otherwise they are sent back, and he gives their arms and horses to his mistress. She is full fair lady, and her name is Corsianda. The island is called Gravisanda. How came he, said Gaylor, to keep the forest? It was a boon asked of him by a damsel, said she, though his mistress hardly permitted him to perform it. By this they reached the island. The night was some way advanced, but it was clear moonlight. The damsel had 2 tents pitched besides a little brook, and there they supped and rested till morning. Gaylor would have fain shared the damsel's tent, but to that, albeit she thought him the fairest of all knights, and much delighted in his conversation, she would not consent. In the morning they set forward, and he asked his guide if she knew the knight's name. Neither man nor woman in all this land know it, except his mistress. Then was Gaylor the more curious that one of such worth in arms should so conceal himself. Presently they saw a castle on a height, surrounded for a league on all sides by a rich plain. In that castle, quoth the damsel, is he whom you seek. Having advanced farther, they found a stone pillar curiously wrought, and a horn upon it. Sound that horn, said she, and you shall presently see the knight. Gaylor blew the horn, and forthwith there came certain men from the castle, and pitched a tent in the meadow before the gate, and then there issued out 10 dames and damsels, and in the midst of them one richly clad, who was the lady of the rest. Why does the knight tarry? Quoth Gaylor, who saw all this. The damsel answered, He will not come till the lady send for him. I beseech you then, he said, go to her and request her to summon him, for I have much to do elsewhere, and cannot tarry. When the lady heard this errand, What? cried she, holds he our knight so cheap that he already thinks of doing aught elsewhere? He will depart sooner than he thinks, and more to his cost. Then she turned to her man, Go, call the strange knight. Anon he came from the castle, armed and afoot. His men led his horse, and carried his shield and lance and helmet, and he went straight to his mistress. You see a foolish knight yonder, said she, who thinks lightly to take his leave of you. I desire you would make him know his foolishness. And then she embraced and kissed him. All this made Gaylor the more angry. The knight mounted and slowly rode down the height. Gaylor was ready as soon as he saw him in the level, and bade him defend himself. They ran at each other. Both lances were broken, both shields pierced, both knights deeply wounded. Don Gaylor drew his sword. The stranger said to him, Knight, by faith you owe to God, and to the thing you love best, let us joust once more. You conjure me so, said Gaylor, that I will do it. But I am sorry my horse is not so good as yours, else we would have jousted till one of us fell, or till all your lances were broken. The knight made no answer, but called to his squire for 2 lances, and sent one to Gaylor. Again they encountered. Gaylor's horse came on his knees and tottered, and was almost down. The stranger lost both his stirrups, and was fain to hold round the neck of his horse. Gaylor spurred up his, and had now a sword in hand. Thereat the stranger, somewhat abashed, exclaimed, You are desirous to do combat with swords, certes. I fear it rather than you than for yourself. If you do not believe me, you shall see. Do your worst, quoth Gaylor. I will either die or revenge those whom you left in the forest. Then the stranger recollected that it was he who had defied him on foot, and he answered him angrily, Revenge yourself if you can, but I rather think you will carry back one shame upon another. The ladies, seeing how gallantly they jousted, thought that they would have accorded, but when they saw the sword battle, they were greatly amazed at the fury at which it had begun. Such mortal blows they gave each other, The head was often made to bow upon the breast, and steel arches of the helmets were cut through, and their trappings, and the sword went through the linings, and it was felt upon the head, and the field was strewn with fragments of their shields and their broken mail. This continued long, till each, wondering that his antagonist could hold out, the gaoler's horse at last began to fail him, and could scarcely move, whereat he waxed exceedingly wroth, thinking that only this delayed his victory, for the stranger could lightly come on, and withdraw again from his blows. Gaoler, when indeed he did reach him, made him feel the sword, but his horse tottered as if he had been blind, and he began to fear his own death more than he had ever done before in any battle, save in that with his brother Amadis, for from that he never expected to leave off alive. Next to Amadis, he thought this the best knight he had ever encountered, albeit he doubted not of conquering him, were it not for the fault of his horse.